Tina had always imagined marriage would be like those Nollywood films where the husband comes home carrying suya in one hand and flowers in the other, greeting his wife with pet names like Sweetheart, Honey Pie, and My World. But what she got was Sam, a man who once promised her heaven and earth, but now only promised her one more match. When they first got married, Sam was attentive and playful. He would sit with her on the couch and gist about work, and sometimes they would even go out to eat roasted corn together. But ever since that black box called PS5 entered their sitting room, Sam had been kidnapped in broad daylight, and his ransom was laughter from FIFA commentary. Every evening after work, Sam would drop his bag, ignore Tina's welcome, and head straight for the console as if the controller was his oxygen mask. He would sit, plug in his headset, and start shouting at the television like a coach that was owed salary. Even the neighbors could hear him screaming, "Referee, are you blind? That is offside. Shoot, shoot, go!" While Tina would just sit in the kitchen stirring soup in silence and wondering how her husband had turned into a full-time commentator without pay. Sometimes she tried to talk to him, but Sam had mastered the art of selective hearing. If Tina said, "Sam, can we talk?" he would reply, "Yes, baby, just one match." But that one more match was like a bottomless pit because one more turned to two, and two would turn to 10, until suddenly it was 3 a.m. and Sam was still wide awake, arguing with strangers online about penalty kicks. Tina, on the other hand, would already be lying in bed alone, hugging her pillow and asking herself quietly, "Is this pillow my husband now?" The funny part was that Sam treated the PS5 as if it was their first child. In fact, he gave it more attention than he gave to her. He cleaned it every Saturday morning with soft clothes, arranged the wires neatly like umbilical cord, and even adjusted the fan direction so that the console would not sweat. Tina used to joke that if the house caught fire, Sam would save the PS5 before saving her. And each time she said it, Sam would just laugh and reply, "Don't worry, baby, I will come back for you after extra time." Things got worse when Sam started carrying the gaming habits into their family responsibilities. One day, Tina reminded him that electricity bill was due and he nodded, promising to pay. But instead of heading to PHCN office, Sam used the money to buy a brand new controller, telling Tina that it was an investment in his gaming career. Tina nearly fainted. Another day, she asked him to help her carry their leaking gas cylinder for repair. But Sam said, "Baby, please, I am in semi-finals. If I pause now, I will lose my form." By the time he finished the match, the gas had leaked everywhere and Tina was sitting outside fanning herself, threatening to move to her mother's house before she became roasted fish. Her patience was reducing like akara frying oil because marriage was not supposed to be this lonely. She had tried wearing new dresses, cooking his favorite meals, and even suggesting movie nights, but nothing worked. Sam's eyes were fixed on that screen. His ears were tuned to his online teammates and his heart was locked inside his controller. It was as if she was invisible, more than a background character in his game. And the only time he looked at her properly was when he needed water or snacks to power his marathon session. However, the straw that broke the camel's back happened one Friday night when Tina wore a brand new nightgown, hoping Sam would finally notice her. She passed in front of him twice. She coughed and even pretended to drop her phone by mistake, just so she could bend. But Sam only shouted at his player, pass the ball, without even shifting his eyes. Tina stood there with her hands on her waist, staring at him in disbelief. She whispered to herself, "It is official. So, I am competing with Messi and Ronaldo for my husband's attention. Is this what marriage has turned to?" She went to bed that night without saying another word, even though her heart was boiling. Saturday morning came with bright sunshine and the sound of children sweeping the compound. But inside Sam and Tina's flats, the only sound there was the pew 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 of the PS5 loading screen. Sam had already locked himself into another football marathon, sitting with his controller like a surgeon holding scalpel. Tina had woken early, cleaned the house, washed clothes and even fried akara. Yet, Sam did not notice. She passed by him in wrapper, yet no reaction. She passed by again in jeans and makeup, still no reaction. By the third time, she marched past in high heels inside the sitting room, hoping he would at least ask, "Baby, are you going somewhere?" But Sam only screamed at the television, "Ah, ref, that's a clear penalty now." Tina nearly snatched the controller from his hand and used it to break his head. But she tried to hold herself. She decided to cook his favorite meal, goat meat stew with palm oil shining like gold. She cut onions until her eyes watered. She fried tomatoes until neighbors could smell it. And she danced around the kitchen singing, "Today my husband must look at me." By the time she finished, the food was so inviting that even angels could have paused to collect one plate. She set the table nicely, placed the steaming stew and pounded yam with chilled drink by the side, and called him sweetly, "Sam, food is ready." But, much to her heartbreak, Sam only waved one hand without looking at her and muttered, "Baby, one more match. Let me just qualify for Champions League." Tina sighed and went back to the kitchen, telling herself to be patient. 30 minutes passed. Sam was still glued to the screen. An hour passed and the food got cold. By evening, Tina entered the sitting room again, but instead of eating, Sam was still shouting into his headset, "Guys, don't pass back, attack, attack!" Tina looked at him, looked at the untouched stew, looked at her marriage, and something inside her caught. She stood in front of the TV, blocking his view. Sam leaned left. She followed. He leaned right. She followed. He hissed, "Baby, move now. I am in extra time." Tina shouted back, "Move to where? Move to your grave? Since you married this PlayStation, have I not been patient?" She grabbed the controller from his hand. Sam shouted as if she had snatched his oxygen mask. He jumped up. "Tina, don't play with my destiny." Tina pointed at the untouched food and shouted, "Is this food going to be a waste? Am I married to a man or to FIFA 23? Out of desperation, Sam picked up the second controller and said, "Baby, calm down. Let's play together. That will be romantic." Tina almost fainted. "Play together? Are you serious? So your honeymoon gift to me is to tackle Messi on the screen? Sam, is this how your father raised you?" Seeing that there was no point in talking to him, Tina stomped into the bedroom, muttering loudly, "No man should ignore a wife like this unless he wants trouble, oh." And that day, she decided she had had enough. On Monday morning, after thinking and rethinking, Tina packed the PS5 neatly in its box and marched out of the compound. Neighbors watched curiously as she carried it under her arm like a bag of rice. She went straight to the next compound, where Mr. Johnson's children were always begging to come and watch Sam play. She knocked and announced, "Children, your dream has come true. Who wants PS5? The children turned and screamed as if they had won scholarship. She told them, "Just bring 5,000 naira and it's yours." The children turned to their father. He frowned and raised an eyebrow, but when he realized that Tina was serious, he gave them the money. In a matter of seconds, the PS5 was already set up in their sitting room, and the children were dancing around screaming, "Go, go!" While Tina walked back home with the cash folded in her pocket and her face shining with the satisfaction of a woman who had just balanced equation. That evening, Sam returned, whistling again, ready for his game, but he couldn't find his precious game. He searched the table, the shelf, and even under the chair, but nothing. He called out, "Tina, where's my PS5? Tina sat calmly on the couch sipping Fanta. She lifted her eyes. "Oh, your toy? I sold it to the neighbor's children for 5,000 naira. It's a good bargain." That very second, the scream that followed shook the compound. Sam fell to his knees, beating his chest. Jesus! My property! My sweat! Tina! Why have you done this evil? He cried like a baby whose mother denied him breast milk, rolling on the floor as if his intestines were tied to the console. Neighbors rushed in, thinking it was fire outbreak, only to see Sam wailing and pointing at an empty shelf. They asked Tina what happened, and she answered with a calm face, "I sold his second wife." The neighbors burst into laughter. One of them shouted, Sam, so your wife has chased away her rival." Another one joked, "This one will reach the church elders." Sam heard that clearly, and he wiped his tears and shouted, "Yes, the elders must hear this abomination." And with that, he stormed out of the house like a man whose house had been invaded by demons. He was holding his car keys and shouting, "Tina has finished me, oh! My own wife has sold my destiny for 5,000 naira." People rushed out expecting to hear news of infidelity or stolen money, only to find Sam pointing at his chest and crying like someone whose goats had been carried away. "She sold my PS5, my life, my joy, my reason for living." The whole street went silent for a moment, then suddenly, they burst out laughing. One man shook his head and said, "Oga Sam, is it not just a toy? Why are you shouting like burial announcer?" Another neighbor scoffed loudly. "So, this is what the man has been worshipping all this time. The wife has finally chased his idol away." Sam almost collapsed from anger. Meanwhile, the Johnson's children in the next compound had already connected the PS5 to their television. Their loud voices pierced through the walls as they shouted, "Go, go! Ronaldo has scored!" The sound pierced Sam's heart like a dagger. He staggered to the wall, pressed his ear against it as if he was listening to funeral drums, and burst into fresh tears. "Those children are enjoying my sweat." He ran back inside the house and confronted Tina, who was sitting calmly on the couch eating granuts as if nothing had happened. "Tina, do you know what you have done? Do you know how much that PS5 is worth? Hundreds of thousands, and you sold it for ordinary 5,000 naira. Tina replied without raising her eyes, "Yes, I needed space in this house and I wanted peace of mind. I sold your second wife. At least now I can see your face without headsets covering it." Sam screamed like a man in labor, rolled on the floor and shouted, "No, no, this is oppression. This is persecution. I cannot take this. I will report you to the elders." And true to his words, the next Saturday morning, Sam wore his best shirts, polished his shoes and marched to the church office. The elders were in a meeting discussing serious matters about tithes, choir discipline and church repairs, when Sam suddenly burst in and knelt dramatically before them, with tears rolling down his cheeks. "Fathers in the Lord, my wife has committed an abomination. Please come and help me." The elders looked alarmed, expecting to hear something about adultery or secret shrine. One elder leaned forward and asked, "My son, what happened?" Sam sniffed and shouted, "She sold my PS5. There was silence. Then Elder John cleared his throat and asked, "Sorry, what is PS5? Is it land?" Sam shook his head. "No, sir, it is a console." Another elder whispered, "Is console not furniture?" Sam screamed, "No, sir, it is my PlayStation, my investment, my future, my reason to live." The elders exchanged confused looks. One tried to hide his laughter behind a cough. Finally, Elder Thomas asked, "And how much did she sell it?" Sam beat his chest painfully. 5,000 naira, sir. 5,000 for something worth more than my 3 months' salary. The elders gasped in disbelief, not because they valued the PS5, but because they could not believe a wife could truly sell it so cheaply. Just then, Tina walked in calmly, greeted the elders and sat down. They asked her if what Sam said was true, and she answered boldly, "Yes, fathers, I sold it. I have been competing with that toy for attention since this marriage began. He cleans it, feeds it with electricity, praises it, and spends hours shouting at it, while I, his wife, sit alone. If I am wrong, then tell me what kind of marriage this is." The elders were stunned. They looked at Sam, who was still kneeling with tears in his eyes. Elder John shook his head slowly and said, "My son, you brought us here to settle a quarrel between you and a toy. You abandoned your wife for a game." Another elder added, "Even the Bible says, he who does not care for his household is worse than an unbeliever. Was it your PS5 you married or Tina?" Sam tried to defend himself, shouting, "It is just a hobby. It keeps me happy." Tina cut in sharply. "Happy? So I don't make you happy? You forgot to eat food? You forgot to pay bills? You ignore me in bed because Mercy is scoring on screen. Which happiness is that one?" The elders could not hold it anymore. One burst into laughter, then another joined, until the whole council was laughing at Sam's predicament. Sam covered his face in shame, muttering, "This is conspiracy. Everybody is against me." The elders finally composed themselves and told Tina that she should not have sold it without his consent. But they also warned Sam that neglecting his wife for games was a great sin. They ordered him to apologize and take Tina out at least once a week. And they declared the PS5 gone for good, since the children who bought it had already signed covenant with it. Sam cried again. "So the elders too have abandoned me?" He stood up, dusted his trousers, and walked back home from the elders' meeting like a man who had just buried his only child, except that in this case, the dead child was his PS5. He dragged his feet slowly, still crying, while Tina followed quietly behind him with a straight face. The neighbors who had been waiting for gist saw them returning together and started murmuring, "Ah, the case has reached tribunal. Judgment has been delivered." Some even followed them halfway, pretending to be going to buy bread just to hear updates. As they entered their flats, Sam slumped into the chair dramatically, holding his head with both hands and muttering, "So I, Sam, son of Peter, have been disgraced before everyone because of toy?" Tina ignored him and went into the kitchen, humming happily as if she had just returned from choir practice. Moments later, the laughter of the Johnson's children floated across the wall again, louder than ever. They were screaming, "Go, go!" and banging the table with excitement. Sam jumped up, paced the room like a madman and shouted, "This is torture! Those children are playing my life's work." He rushed outside and peeped into their window like a thief. True enough, the console was shining there on their screen, and the children were dancing around it as if they had won a jackpot. When they saw Sam's face peeping through the window, one of them shouted, "Uncle Sam, come and see my goal." The other one added, "Uncle, thank you for selling it so cheap. God bless your wife." Sam nearly fainted on the spot. He staggered back to his living room, sat on the floor, and began crying again. Tina came out and shook her head, saying, "Sam, if you had given me half the attention you gave that game, this marriage would not have reached the elders' table." Sam tried to reply, but the words refused to come out because his throat was tight with regrets. He finally muttered, "Tina, I am sorry. I thought it was just a hobby. I didn't know it was slowly stealing my home." Tina folded her arms and said, "You knew. You just pretended not to know. But don't worry, since your second wife is gone, you can now return to your first wife." And so, from that week, the elders' punishment began to take effect. They had ordered Sam to take Tina out at least once a week, and he obeyed. One Friday evening, instead of shouting into headsets, he was sitting beside Tina in a small eatery, watching her eat chicken, while he picked bones silently, muttering, "This chicken money could have bought FIFA 24 upgrade." But each time he complained, Tina would glare at him and he would quickly smile, "Baby, you look beautiful." But the biggest consequence was the public disgrace that refused to die down. The parents in the compound had turned him into a warning sign. Whenever their children refused to read, they would point at Sam's window and say, "If you don't focus on your book, you will end up like Uncle Sam, whose wife sold his PS5 for 5,000 naira, and the children would instantly pick up their books to read." One Sunday morning in church, the pastor even used Sam's story as the sermon illustration. He preached, "Brethren, whatever takes your attention away from your wife and family is an idol, even if it is a toy. The whole congregation turned and looked at Sam, and he bent his head like a guilty schoolboy. However, with time, Sam began to realize the truth. Even though he missed his beloved console, he had gained something else back: his wife's attention and the peace of his home. He began spending more evenings sitting with Tina, listening to her gist, helping her in the kitchen, and even following her to the market sometimes. He had been humbled, and everyone could see it. One evening, Sam and Tina sat in front of their flat sipping zobo together. From the neighbor's house, the Johnson's children's voices came again. "Go, go!" Sam squeezed his eyes shut in pain, but this time he held Tina's hand and muttered, "At least I still have you." Tina smiled and replied, "Yes, and as long as I am here, there will be no more second wives made of plastic." Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. Share the story out with your loved ones and give the story a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories. Thank you and remain blessed.